Well, good morning. My name is Tom. I come to you from the great state of Maine. Welcome to my shop today. Today we're going to be talking about live bait. With anything in this country, everything has gotten more expensive. Everything from registering to snowmobile. Well, I'm talking about the state of Maine. I don't know about the rest of the country. But they've upped the registration for snowmobiles. They've upped the registration for four-wheelers. Every way that the state of Maine can make money off of sportsmen, that's exactly what they're doing. So, one of the other things that's gone way up in cost is the cost of live bait. I thought it was ridiculous 40 years ago when it was $2 a dozen. So you can imagine how I feel now. I am doing this video to simplify for the average fisherman how to take care of live bait. I decide this is my old equipment. This is new for as far as my equipment. I have trapped and stored live bait for 25 years. I did it from about the time I was 18 years old until sometime 35 to 40 in that area. And then I kind of got away from the trapping and got away from the storing of the live bait and was purchasing the live bait. As much as I hated to, but I was able to get the bigger bait that I was looking for by buying it. So that's the difference as far as what I've been doing, say, the last 10 years. But cost of bait right now is $7, $8 a dozen. I didn't price it out this year, but it's got to have gone up. The same thing with the suckers and the same thing with the large creek chubs. All of that stuff is just ridiculous now. Years ago, you could buy, they would give you the large shiners. You'd go to the bait store and they couldn't give them away. Those are what I fished with back then. Well, nowadays, with the pike fishing that's come along in the state of Maine, that bait has become very expensive. I want to say close to $2 a piece now, but I don't want to lie to you. It's just I haven't been to the bait store. I know last year, I'm pretty sure they were $1.50 per bait. Well, you know, if you've got, I got 4 grandsons now that are going fishing. So it's time to dust off my old trapping equipment for bait. It's time to go out and scout the ponds again, see what's going on out in the ponds that I used to trap. So, but let's get to what I want to talk about. Simplify. Keep it simple, stupid. I watched a few videos on YouTube about keeping live bait and how they do it nowadays. Well, with the invention of the internet and everybody having to be smarter than the other guy, keeping live bait has become very complicated. And that's the best that I can put it. That's the easiest way I can put it as far as, keep it simple, stupid. It doesn't need to be complicated. I kept bait in that basement for 25 years. The only thing that I had running, I had a cast iron bathtub, and the only thing that was in that bathtub was an aerator for 1,000 shiners. I would either trap them or purchase them. You could buy 1,000 shiners back then for $75 a dozen. And it was a mixed batch. You didn't get, now they sort them, you got to buy an exact size, they sort them. They didn't sort them back then. You could walk into a bait store and they dip in the pond, in their little box, and out would come your 2 dozen shiners or whatever, and they were all mixed sizes. So that was perfect for the ice fishermen. Now I find it very cumbersome. You gotta go, I need 3 of those, I need 2 of those. I mean, what a pain in the butt. And when you bought them by the 1,000, you got just the way they come into the net. You know, when you're out trapping with a big net, they get 10,000 shiners, so it's a mix. And that's perfect for the home bait guy. The biggest thing that I can see with nowadays, as far as the internet and teaching people how to keep bait, is they don't want to they don't want to change out the water. And the other thing they're doing is they're keeping their bait tanks in a heated basement. Those are the two things that I think are causing them all the problems, that are why they've got to have such a complicated system to take care of their bait. My basement is unheated. It stays at a temperature of around 40 to 50 degrees when it's a mild temperature. When it gets down colder, then the temperature drops down to about 35 degrees in my basement. I have a garage door, and that's what allows the cold air to seep in. Like I said, nothing's heated down there. It stays warm enough to keep the pipes from freezing, and that's perfect. The tanks are down low. You could keep a tank out in an outdoor shed. It doesn't need to be a heated building. A little bit of ice in the tank is not going to hurt your fish. It's going to be beneficial. Bait dealers of the past weren't in heated buildings. They were in very cold buildings. They might have had an oil burner, them kerosene heaters going to just keep the chill out of the place. But basically it was to keep the water as close to freezing as possible. 32 degrees to 42 degrees is perfect on your water temperature. And that's really about it. And then the other thing that I do is I swap out the water at least once a month. And if I'm down there and I'm doing nothing, it takes nothing to swap out the water. What you want to do is swap out half of the water. This big jug holds 275 gallons. So I will take out about 150 gallons. And it has gotten much easier than it was 30 years ago. They sell submersible water pumps now for these ponds and stuff, so you can have decorative waterfalls and stuff like that. I purchased a 250 or maybe it was 500 gallons an hour water pump off eBay for $14. That's what I'm going to run in here as far as swapping the water out. I can run a hose out the back door. I can drop that pump in here, and I can suck this tank down to half full in no time. Half hour, it'll be out the door, and I'll be filling it back up with fresh water. Now I run on a regular well. The fish love it. The fish love regular water. Now if you're in the city, you're going to have to do a couple of other things. There's a chlorine treatment. I don't know much about the chlorine treatment to keep bait. I do know it's an additive to the water. That's about it. But that's something you are going to have to look into if you're getting your water from the city. It can be done. When we used to purchase bait years ago, that came from some guys lived in town, and that's what they had was town water or city water, wherever you was purchasing your bait. Especially, I'm going back to when I was a teenager. There was a not too far from the high school was a bait dealer, and on Friday afternoon I would run over to that bait dealer, grab myself 3 or 4 dozen shiners, and then I was good for the weekend. So, and he was on city water and all that. But if you're on well water, keeping bait is as simple as pouring water. It really frustrates me when I see so much stuff on the internet and on YouTube that complicates it. I'm talking to the new guy. If you're new to ice fishing, or you're just plain tired of buying bait at the cost that it is, it really takes the fun out of it for me if I've got to go spend $20 or $30 or $40 on bait so I can go ice fishing for a few days. That's not doable for me. And the other thing is the fish that I catch are fish that I eat. I catch fish for my table. It's just like deer hunting. The least amount of money I can put into that deer is the cheaper it is per pound. Well, it's the same way when it comes to this bait. The least amount of money I can put into the bait makes the fish that I catch that much cheaper per pound. That's the only way that I can do my lifestyle, the way you see it in these videos, is to cut corners where I can cut corners. And it's just plain fun. You know, you try dropping some bait baskets in out in a small pond somewhere and go there and find yourself with 200-300 shiners. You're going to be beaming ear to ear. So today's project is to turn this, like I said, I used to have a cast iron tub. I've got this now. I've got a 55-gallon drum that's also a bait tank for me. But today what I'm going to do is cut off the top just a little bit so that I can get in there with equipment and aerators and all of that kind of stuff. Alright, the tank is finished, ready to be installed. Cut a hole in the top, move this bar over so I could tie the top to it. So now it's a matter of just moving it into place. And then get it into place in the basement and get it filled up with water. So that's today's plan. But I wanted to talk about simplifying taking care of bait, especially in the wintertime. Now, if you're going to try to keep bait in the summertime in warmer temperatures, then you are going to have to get into those complicated systems. But if you're going to keep bait for ice fishing and you start keeping it in, let's say November, December, right through to March, you know, the end of ice fishing season, you will have no problem keeping bait if the only thing that you do is put an aerator in it and change the water in your tank every 3 weeks. If those are the only two things you do for your bait will last until March 31st when it's time to ice fish. As long as you're not in a heated basement. So if you're in a heated basement that's 70 degrees, all bets are out the window. You can, like I said, you could build yourself an insulated box in a shed out back, or you don't have to have an insulated box at all. You could get yourself a freezer. That's a little bit of an insulation. That will help on the cold nights. That'll help on the cold nights, if it's 20 below zero, stuff like that. But if you just have an outbuilding to get your tank into, it's all right if it freezes up a little bit. Skim ice on the top is perfect. Don't worry about it. The other way I kept bait was right down back here in the swamp. I built a 2-foot by 4-foot box, 4 feet deep with 1/4-inch mesh. It had an insulated cover, and I would store my bait in that for the winter time. I would go drop it in as soon as the ice was safe enough to do, and then I would snowmobile out to the bait box, dump my bait in, and that was the easiest and best way to keep my bait. I would leave here on a snowmobile, I would head down to the bait box, I would grab my bait, I would drive up the lake, I would ice fish all day, and then on the way back home, I would stop again at the bait box, dump my bait back into the bait well, and then I was good for the next time. So, just different ways to take care of it, and mainly, keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't let this get complicated, because it doesn't need to be. Have a cup of coffee, and I will see you on the other side.